I do a lot of walking, and I think and think and think, and then I start visualizing the main theme that I want. I go a lot into my history, into my ancestral history, starting with the phenomenal richness of pre-Columbian Mexico, pre-conquest Mexico, and really going back into, all the way back into human history, how all the civilizations that the world has seen strives to find the answers. Where do we come from? Who created us? Where are we going in an afterlife? Who created the wonders of the universe? All these civilizations come up with answers through what we call myths. Living in the South is a very uncomfortable place for Mexicans, and I had really lost myself. I had no idea who I was. I said, I'm going back home to Mexico City, and I'm going to try to find out who I am, trying to center myself. I had learned how to draw. I had taken good design classes, and so I started evolving from the tissue paper ones onto archival papers, and then moved to New Mexico, and that's where it really, something just really hit my head, and that's when it really started moving into what I do now, because I don't know why. There's something about the atmosphere of New Mexico or something that was just perfect for me. I fall asleep thinking and thinking, and in the morning it seems like, oh, that's what it is. And I remember in my work, everything has to be connected, because if not, the paper implodes. So that's one thing. So you have to think architecturally also of how everything is going to be connected. I talked about unity and respect. I want a dialogue to get started, or talking points about unifying us back together with respect and with courtesy, and not have these divisions, and whether it's ethnicity or race or whatever sex you are, or whatever it is, just to bring us together and to finally recognize that we're all in this little world together.
I started when I was a little girl with a scrapbook and drawing pictures of the things around me and cutting things out and putting in the scrapbooks. That turned into shoe boxes. I would get on the bus early in the morning and ride it all day long when I was in high school and fill sketchbooks, because I just was fascinated with people. And I think my current work still reflects that, my fascination with humanity and people and just the lives that we live. I do commissions for people, and they'll give me a shoebox full of bits and pieces. And I've done enough commissions now that those shoeboxes generally are quite telling, because they all contain evidence of some of the same milestones: marriage, graduation, a death of a loved one, a concert, a trip that somebody, that European trip, that vacation someone saved up for, those sort of things. We try to retain some tangible evidence that this event took place, so we can look at that and remember. When I'm working and moving from piece to piece, generally I surround myself with 3 or 4 pieces that aren't finished. And sometimes I'll have a piece up 2-3 weeks and I don't touch it because I'm not sure the next place to go with the work. And so I start working on a piece where I know exactly the direction I'm moving, but I keep glancing at the other piece. And then that spark will move me, and then I move directly over to the other piece and continue working on it. I want the work to be aesthetically pleasing. As an artist, I always want to create something that's beautiful in the sense that it grabs someone's attention, because I realize that when I make something, it's not mine anymore because it goes somewhere else. And I want them to come at it that way, and then they get pulled in and start reading the information, and then it becomes something more. A lot of the things I use in my work are clothing tags and references of really expensive purchases. Like you spend $200-300 for a pair of shoes or a garment, and I take the tags because they're beautiful. And I love the tags, the strings that were they attached, because to me that's that memory of it attaching to a garment. And so the reference to commodity exists in my work, but then my work itself becomes commodity because I sell it. Making the work is always the most rewarding, and then coming in my studio each morning and looking what I had done the day before, and then at some point, I take everything down and it's gone, and I start all over. I think it comes through me. It comes from my environment. It comes from my memories and the people in my life and the places I go. I don't always know right away. This working with layers of paper is difficult because you're dependent upon the color and the value. You're searching for certain colors, certain textures, certain colors that I can't simply mix with a paintbrush. So I find that, and that's why I have piles of paper around. I'm always surprised from the outcome of my work. I have a general idea where I'm going with each piece, but often the direction where it ends up is completely different. And I have to allow that to happen.
I've always been curious as a child. I was always the child in class that put my hand up and asked questions constantly, so I was probably very annoying, but to me it's about investigation. My work is about exploration and experiential, so I like to ask questions of myself. What would happen if I did this and put that together with it? And so it's really a way of uncovering things by asking questions. The Seed Vessel project is one that is still very much a seed, even though I have 220, let's say I did a couple more whilst you were here, so about 224. I have a vision of this as a large installation with light and sound that the vessels make. And it's not fully formed for me as really truly what it's about, but I'm compelled to keep making them. I like the physicality of clay. I like the fact that it's very pliable to a point, but it's also extremely fragile. I absolutely put myself into my work. From whether it's fingerprints in the clay that end up on the final product, which is another reason why I don't like glazing ceramics, to my breathing in my work, I've put mud all over my body at times and done a bunch of different things like that. So yes, I am in my work very physically, so it's a very physical embodiment of me. Being aware of my breath first started when I was working on my newsprint series, and that was in Seattle, and somebody just asked me what's underneath the newspaper, and I thought about that, and I realized I was going to say nothing, but actually there's my breathing is under the work that forms these ripples on the paper. So it was then that I consciously started incorporating my breath as a rhythmic movement to generate the work. So when I inhaled, I was using a light, fine line on the paper, and as I exhaled, I would increase the pressure on the brush to allow more ink onto the paper. So it became a record of my breathing at that time. I'm paying very close attention to when I'm working and not trying to let my mind wander, and that can be challenging. I do practice a meditation, and that's a very necessary part of my process in my artwork and in my daily life. I use different materials, for example, graphite, ink, paper, clay, and they're all natural materials. I don't like to work with synthetics in any way. So I think I like to be connected with the earth and things that have been living at least at some point in their iteration. For example, sumi ink's normally used for calligraphy and brush paintings, and I've been using it in a way that's more contemporary and less traditional, but I still feel like I'm honoring the ancient practice of those arts. A friend of mine last year said to me, well, you know, Native Americans have seed pots. And I didn't know that. That really resonated with me. So when I say honoring ancient practices, that feels like there's a connection there with those. They're very animated, and I actually started making vessels back in 1991, but they were a slightly different form. So they've been around a while, and now they're getting momentum. They're singing. Yeah, singing, absolutely. Let's hope they're singing a good earth song.
When I was young, I was obsessed with magazines, and particularly fashion magazines. And I think what I zeroed in on them was all of the textures and the patterns. It was just a very natural attunement to the paper of the magazine and the qualities of the textiles. I began taking photos of blankets and comforters in my immediate environment. I always start with what's around me and where those meaningful materials that are in our daily life exist, how we interact with them. And so I wasn't thinking about making art yet. I was just observing my life. So it was just waking up and seeing the comforter, the form of the comforter after waking up, and saying, this is an unconscious sculpture right here. When people look at my work, they don't always immediately recognize it as bedding. And obviously, they don't always recognize it as a photograph, especially the large photographs of blankets and comforters. They think it's a textile, and they walk up closer and they realize it's a photograph. And that tension of us being able to step back from a very familiar material and see it in a new light is a great sort of access point to these sort of unknown realms that exist in sleep. When I envision these, I kind of have a combination of, I see a very clear picture of a form or have a very clear concept. But then as I'm working, a very kind of intuitive part comes as my body is interacting with the paper and moving things around and things are overlapping. Then imagery emerges that I did not plan at all. There's lots of bird-like imagery and feathered qualities and, very organic forms that come out. This piece is called Dark Water Drop, and it's a part of a series of water drops that I'm still in process of making now. So in this piece, I was thinking both about my immediate experience, my personal experience of water, but then also coming from Michigan and Detroit, the Flint water crisis had just happened, and it was a very challenging situation. But also moving to the high desert of New Mexico after living by water most of my life, I really became aware of what an integral part of our lives it is. And it's us, we are 70% water. We need to not see it as outside of ourselves or separate from ourselves. It's the health of the earth and the health of our existence is at stake. To really fully bring the work to life, I feel like it's all about relationships too. It's not just about discrete objects that live in a very pristine environment. A lot of the pieces are like portals to kind of a mysterious part of our lives and our minds that we may not understand very well, but it's like an entry point to sort of begin to explore it. I hope when people experience the work, they are able to pause and really feel some sense of connection to something deeper, a deeper part of themselves, a deeper part of our existence. I often think about how just place impacts me no matter where I am. And in particular, New Mexico's beauty is there's more land than people. And so we are the minority. And so therefore, I feel like I need to listen to the land. And that's what I've been doing since I've been here.
I'm a book and fiber artist, graphic designer, and educator. I was born in Ukraine and have been living in the U.S. since 2000. In my work, I play with words, materials, and structures to find and expose poetic connections between human body and nature. My garden is my lab for growing plants for food, paper-making, dyes, and pleasure. In the warm weather, I harvest local plants, cook them, beat in Hollander beater, and make paper. My process evolves and adapts to the environments around me. The interconnectedness of beings, plants, and the environment, their resilience and fragility, finality and cyclical nature are the constant fascination and the driving force behind my work. My creative process is a way to articulate the immaterial connections, precious observations, and personal revelations. I am fascinated by the natural materials and the way they influence my art.